We're here at the Minnesota Farmers Union Annual Convention in the Twin Cities. I am with Bruce Miller of the Minnesota Farmers Union. How are you doing today, sir?
I am great, Dustin. Thanks for coming to the Farmers Union's 76th Annual Convention.
It looks like you have a very good turnout here this morning, and it's good to see all these people get together.
It's huge, and I think part of why so many people come, and we're going to have 400 or 500 people here tonight for our banquet, and there's probably 300-400 people here on the floor listening to speakers today. But this is a family farm organization, and so a lot of the people coming are old friends, and then we have a huge turnout of young people this year, and they're just making friends for the first time within the Farmers Union family. So it's just been a great morning so far. Started at 6:30 with a locally grown foods breakfast.
Okay, and so it's always good. It's one of the highlights I know you guys have. It's always the locally grown meals that you guys serve. It's always one of the great highlights of the convention.
It's interesting. I believe that this is the only convention of its kind, of this size, where we're looking at 300, 400, 500 people, that we're sourcing all of the food from Minnesota family farmers. So this is truly a locally grown food convention, as well as one that's going to take up important policy questions like the Farm Bill and health care and renewable fuels, as well as other things that affect the livelihood and the welfare and the good of people living in rural Minnesota.
You know, and as we look at the policy that's going to be coming up this year, like you said, those things you talked about, whether it's trade, RFS, all that, there's a lot of what ifs this year, and especially with the Farm Bill looming, and that's always a contentious debate to begin with, and it's just a lot of wait and see, but you almost have to have a game plan in place, and that's what these meetings are for.
That's what this meeting is for. This is a way for us and our membership to really debate and adopt, pass policy that we can then work on as a part of our legislative programs. So the Farm Bill is a really great example. There's so many unknowns, from a understaffed USDA to a Congress that's looking at budget issues or tax issues that could affect farmers. So I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion today and tomorrow on what do our members think we should do about the Farm Bill. And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be some consensus that we need to be actively engaged in the passing of a new Farm Bill, a 5-year Farm Bill that really continues to provide a safety net for family farmers, as well as a safety net for a diverse population through the Supplemental Nutrition Program. Beginning farmer programs, country of origin labeling continues to be an issue for Minnesota Farmers Union members. And so as the group debates that policy, it's going to be very fascinating to know come Sunday night what our marching orders are to work on the Farm Bill.
And it's going to be interesting with this Farm Bill, like we mentioned earlier. There's budget cuts coming, and Secretary Perdue knew that when he took office. And it's not going to be easy, because really a Farm Bill is a policy that you really can't afford to take any cuts out of.
No, it's a zero-sum game. There is no fat in the Farm Bill. This is an essential bill. Now, I'm not going to say other parts of government don't need some of that, but the Farm Bill really is how we do agriculture in the United States, and it's how we do agriculture and family farming that really is the most important part of that. We can't continue to put family farmers at risk without a good, sound Farm Bill, and so we feel it's incumbent upon the Congress to pass a Farm Bill, a 5-year Farm Bill, and with the help of Secretary Perdue, and let's get it on the desk of the President to sign a new Farm Bill.
Now, another thing that's been coming up, and it really came to a head in the last couple of weeks, is the RFS. We had that little bit of a scare there with the levels of biodiesel in the current RFS maybe being changed, and now it's definitely going to be a contentious debate, probably with the 2018 RFS coming up.
Yeah, and we will be debating an issue this weekend on the renewable fuel standard. It really does affect the lives of a lot of Minnesota farmers who are growing crops, and so we're going to be encouraging the Environmental Protection Agency, or the issue we're going to be looking at is encouraging the Environmental Protection Agency to support the RFS. And we need that level of support to keep a healthy rural economy going. And so we will find out if our members support that RFS and support expanding it. And I'm looking forward to a lively debate on whether it is an essential matter for family farmers here at the Farmers Union.
And really, most of the stuff that we talked about with the RFS that happened with the biodiesel side, but it did throw a scare into the ethanol producers.
It certainly did.
As together as they are for renewable fuels, they are their own separate entities and their own separate marketplaces. And ethanol really took a step back and said, "Whoa, wait a minute! If this can happen to them, it can happen to us."
Precisely. This is this is kind of when you find out that we're all in this together, and that we all do better when we all do better. And so I think we're going to see a shift towards more people working together. And it's really, we can grow fuel here at home. We do not need to be dependent upon the price of a barrel of oil to be successful. Our farmers can do biodiesel, our farmers can do ethanol, and who knows what else we can do as time goes on. We're out there prepared to take whatever action we need to continue to be successful. So RFS is one of our top issues we'll be debating here both today and tomorrow.
And of course, trade is always something that's been coming up a lot. I mean, we're talking about renegotiating NAFTA, which we understand for some, industries, that's something that maybe they have to take a step back and look at. But the NAFTA has been very friendly to agriculture, and it's something we don't want to lose ground on. Maybe we can find some stuff to pick up, there, but we definitely don't want to lose any ground.
I think our history and our policy and our programs has always been one of supporting fair trade, and fair trade as opposed to free trade, fair trade that benefits family farmers. So when we look at trade issues, our first question is it fair, and do family farmers really benefit? So as the debate over NAFTA and what happens next continues, that'll be the critical question that farmers need to pose. Does this help us or hinder us? How does it help us, and what can we do about it? And so, again, our convention will be able to give us some guidance on that point as well.
And another thing I know a lot of farm organizations are watching, it just got moved a little bit on Thursday, and that's that tax bill that went through the House of Representatives. I know there are things that everybody agrees on that need to be changed with taxes. Death tax and estate planning, that kind of thing has always been at the forefront, especially when you're talking about moving farms on to the next generation. But there are things that are making organizations step back and say, okay, is this the best thing for the country at the same time? There's a lot of wait and see to see how this all shuffles out, especially when the Senate has to maybe take it up as well.
It does, and as it stands right now, I haven't studied it closely, but the bit I've read on it and followed it is it doesn't seem particularly friendly to family farmers right now. And so I think as it moves forward into the Senate, the questions we'll be asking senators, the committees and the whole Senate is really, how does it show it? It's kind of maybe there's a little bit of Missouri in us, but show me how it's really going to work. Who does this benefit really? Let's see some cost analysis. Let's see some real life scenarios. Let's take a look at how does this bill impact the bottom line of a farmer in Redwood County, Minnesota? How does this benefit somebody living in Wilmer, Minnesota as well? We have concern about family farmers and their livelihoods, but we're also concerned about what's happening in rural America and rural Minnesota in particular. How can we keep that a sustainable? How can we keep it sustainable? How can we just keep life out there good? And how does this tax bill affect us? And I think that's the great unknown for us at this point.
And we talked a lot about federal issues, but also state legislature is going to be coming up here in January. I know infrastructure is something that we really worry about out here. I mean, especially in Redwood County, we've got railroads that need repairing. We've got bridges that need fixing. We need internet speed out there. There's a lot of gray area that needs to be colored in out there.
We have been saying this for years, that we need to pay attention to infrastructure. Our roads, our bridges, all of that, our railroads, everything that benefits farmers needs to be looked at right now. And not just farmers, rural residents. Broadband, huge issue. It's hard to be living in the internet world when you're on dial-up speeds. It's not hard. It's impossible to do it. The reality is, if we want rural Minnesota to be successful, if we want people to live there and stay there, if we want to keep our bright, young, talented people in rural Minnesota, we have to figure out how to get high-speed internet services out to each and every farm place. It's not enough to put them in restaurants and cafes and libraries. It needs to be in your living room, so when you come in from a day of work in your fields and your barns, you can turn on your computer. You can do what the rest of the world does and access the world. And that's what we need to see coming sooner rather than later.
And that's something that I know that causes a lot of issues, even with schools. A lot of book companies are not printing out print books anymore. Everything's download. You have these kids that are having to spend, 4 hours downloading a 20-minute video on their lesson plan. That's something that's going to help actually put us behind if these kids can't stay caught up.
Well, that's absolutely right. And they're watching other kids in urban settings have access to the internet. And yet we have to also address cost of the internet too, because it can't continue to, it should be maybe looked at as a public utility in many ways. It's essential to life as we now know it. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you and I wouldn't even be thinking about this, but now we've experienced high-speed internet in some parts of the world, some parts of the country, some parts of Minnesota. And yet we know that when you get out into rural Minnesota and you go out to your farm 7 miles from town and you don't have access to the internet, your kids are put at a severe and significant disadvantage to the rest of the world, not just to their own classmates. And it really puts pressure on us to get that rural broadband high-speed internet out there sooner rather than later.
All right, well, Bruce, we covered a lot of ground here today, and definitely looking forward to working in the next year with the Farmers Union and see how these things advance and see what can be done. And again, thank you for your time and talking with us today.
Absolutely, Dustin. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
That's Bruce Miller of the Minnesota Farmers Union here at the convention in the Twin Cities.